I'm passing now to something a little bit less sentimental about shipping, less like memories, but we will talk about the very present and the numbers. And I think I've got two experts of this sector. One is Fabrizio Vettosi, that is well known with his corporate structure, Venice, who is also on board of shipping and the law since has been for many years. And the other one is also another very good friend is Arturo Capasso, who is a professor of economics and has always looked at the ports and at the shipping with particular attention. They will introduce the distinguished speakers part of the financial and banking system of this session. Thank you. So I hand over the floor to Arturo.
Okay. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We can start. And I would like to call our guest for today, Mr. Iaccarino, Mr. Chambon, Mr. Rinaldi, and Mr. Spetka. So, if they can please close to me, okay? And we can start.
Keep attention to the banker.
Keep attention to the banker.
I am surrounded by the sharks. It's Antonio on the right.
Okay. Okay. First of all, this is the 8th edition of Shipping and Law, so let me give a informal thanksgiving to Mr. Lauro and to the professionals and the staff of Studio Lauro for their incredible efforts in organizing this conference and to give us the opportunity to discuss either in the public sessions and in private conversation of very important topics about the shipping under the different perspective of law and finance. So, in the past, we attended to many conferences about shipping finance, and the main question, since 2008, the main question was how long will last the positive cycle, when the positive cycle is going to an end. And then the answer arrived. And now in the last decade, we are always asking ourselves, is the recovery coming? Are we going to recover from the crisis? As a general opinion, probably at the very end, at the very beginning of the crisis was confused with one of the typical cycle in the shipping business. But we didn't understand that contingency and structural elements were changing the framework of the business. So the idea is that now the recovery is coming, and we assume that after the storm, the future will be brighter, but we have to also to assume that the shipping companies are going to change their financial structure, their internal organization, and in some cases also some aspect of the corporate governance. So my question, the initial question in our slide, if the slide can start. No projection? Okay, just a moment. The initial question was, where is the money for the recovery? And I asked this question to the banker, to my friend Antonio Iaccarino, that is an expert of the... Oh, thank you. Yeah. So this was our first slide. Where is the money for the recovery? So Antonio, will traditional lender came back in the shipping arena or not?
It's a good question, Arturo. I don't know if, yes. you're able to
This
hear
is
me. I think that it takes much more time to have banks active again shipping. To be honest, I think that for the time being, the attention of bank is still focused on the management of their distressed shipping portfolio loan. Therefore, there are many sources such as time, personal capacity that is still tied up in restructuring and the non-performing loans management first. Second, I think that bank sentiment is still affected on one side by a high number of shipping bad loans, high shipping loan provision, high losses suffered over shipping. On the other side, it's still affected by the sharp slowdown of the market trend, or it's better to say a collapse in some fields such as dry bulk sector. So what I mean that perhaps it has created a psychological barrier that so banks scared to invest in the shipping field. Third point, new regulatory frameworks makes lending to this sector more expensive, reduces return, thus makes ship finance less profitable for banks. So I think that it takes some more time to have shipping lending improved. I think that we need to see a market recovery. We know that this recovery is not expected soon in some markets such as dry bulk or container ship. Further recovery of the world economy, banks' balance sheet more strong, relevant capital ratios. So I think that all these things together could help banks to increase their involvement in shipping industry. Otherwise, lending is always the main activity of a bank. In this moment, banks have to improve their profitability, both for guaranteeing the return of their shareholders. Many banks, of course, as you know, are listed. On the other side, to be compliant with the capital requirements of the regulator. So how, in other words, they have to preserve the sustainability of their business. How can then achieve in a quick way these goals? Change their business model requires too much time. So I think that they have other side to sustain critical sides of costs. So they have to increase their assets of good, of course, good quality assets. So I'm sure that they widen their activity. You know that there's not so much credit demand at this moment. I refer to the Italian market, of course, in relationship to the trend of the economic. So I think that all these push banks to widen their activity, so they appear again in the shipping market too. That's all. So I'm optimistic, but I would like to be prudent optimist.
Okay, banking lending is still an important component of financial structure of shipping companies, but also capital market as sometimes have evoked has the possibility to complement the financing of shipping companies. So I would like to ask to Mr. Chambon of Pareto Securities if he sees a possibility of an opportunity to contribute to the financing of the shipping company in the near future.
Yes, well, exactly what is happening in the markets, notably on the Oslo bond side, but as well on the equity side, with the New York listings earlier this year in the dry bulk area, is that basically there is now some capacity in this market to raise liquidity. Those markets was basically closed the past 2 years, and now they are reopening little by little. What does not appear in this chart is that basically most of these volumes should be concentrated on the second half of 2017, second half, I would say. On year to date, this happened maybe past April, and there is an increasing volume of activity on those markets. So that's a relay for providing funds into the shipping markets. Having said that, despite these markets are slightly reopening, this will not completely offset what is happening due to the banks slightly, reducing the leverage, or more than slightly, I'd say, moving from what used to be maybe 75, 80, 85, now to 65. So those markets are not enough to absorb that. And there we come into other sources of capital that we will touch upon later, that could be the Chinese leasing markets and other alternatives vehicles.
Thank you, Baptiste. So Arturo is very intelligent because reserving me for the provocation. So and I have I have the word to put the very tough question to the stage. And so I have two questions for you, and I quite impressed to see in this room, in the lovely atmosphere created by Francesco, just one bank. Probably is one bank in the stage and zero bank on the floor. Is the sign of the times. So, Raffaele, we have a very long-lasting relation. We cooperate since probably close to 15 years with the ABI and Confitarma. And I want to put to you a question that is, we share in this time, we have shared in this time, last times, a lot of arguments in respect to the CRR regulation, the capital adequacy rule, and the reform of Basel 3.5 or Basel 4, I don't know what is the best way to say. Is quite self-explanatory, this slide. So, the cost of credit will increase by the application of the new capital adequacy rules, and very soon will happen. And probably this is my best case calculation. The credit lending will become more expensive at rough 100 basis points for the ship owners for the new project. So, how is your view on respect this point? And on top is remarked, and sorry for the Italian, but was drawn from the Sole 24 Ore, not from the English newspaper. The new, so it probably was the EBA attempted me. Madame Nui. Works. You know that recently Madame Nui imposed a new rule for the treatment of the NPL and the unlikely to pay. The BCE want to offset in the arc of 7 years the unlikely to pay position and 2 years for the bad loans. What's your view about?
Okay. Thank you, Fabrizio, and thank you to the organizer for the invitation to take part to this.
Works?
Sorry.
Works. Works.
Okay. So thanks to the organizer for the invitation to take part to this.
No.
Perhaps. Ecco. I have to keep it. Perhaps.
No. They simply have to.
Works?
Turn on your
This is better. Oh, okay.
The shipping is tradition, is the microphone.
Fine, thank you. Okay, thanks to the organizer for the invitation to take part to this panel. And I think before answering your question, perhaps it's good to give some hints about what is about this Basel regulation. Basel regulations are taken by the Basel Committee. The Basel Committee is made by central bank governors of the main industrialized countries. The decisions that are taken within the Basel Committee are in the form of gentleman agreement. This gentleman agreement must be translated in national law in order to be effective for banks. And Europe's Basel Committee agreements are translated in European regulation, in particular CRR, Capital Requirement Regulation. As Fabrizio said, the proposal about the Basel Committee review of the actual agreement and the proposal of the European Commission of revision of CRR are both penalizing the shipping sector. I won't annoy you explaining why and enter in the technical details why it is, but believe me, this is the situation that Fabrizio showed in the slide. More cost for banks means worst credit access condition for the shipping industry, and I believe that is understandable why. We are working with Confitarma in order to opposite to this proposal within the Basel Committee and within the European Commission. Our standing point is that shipping loans or shipping mortgage is a guarantee as good as commercial real estate mortgage. For this reason, loans which are guaranteed by this security should be treated in the same way. I must say that we see some result of this effort. This effort is giving return. I see that there is much more awareness of this issue among European commissioners and European members of the Parliament. And I think and I believe that it's possible to obtain some result in this sense. I must say that with surprise I discovered with Fabrizio that even other important financial associations are sharing a view, producing papers that backs our position. So I think that our reasonable stance is gaining field. Coming to the other question, I don't know if you want that I ask you that I answer now or after. Now. After.
I would
Okay.
share with Charles. And anyway, we hadn't around the stage a lot of banks, so just one bank, I said before, but we have the representative of all Italian banks, Raffaele, by the ABI, the Italian Bankers Association. So I want to continue my provocation through my comments. Charles, your category is under attention in Italy. So, and personally, by myself, where I stated in July my personal comment against Pillarstone and for the behavior held in Italian cases where they were able to change the rule of finance, never seen since I study at the university, that the equity capital is super senior and respect the debt capital. Never seen in my life. And I learned by peer lesson that could happen also this. It's I was amazed. Anyway, I want to raise a controversial on this stage. Is not the place, it's a lovely and relaxed atmosphere. Is not the case to restate my concept on this stage. I am not nervous, I stay quite calm. Anyway, your category is under attention, and you tapped the Italian market, you are interested in the Italian market in order to negotiate some deals with the banks on the NPL, on likely to pay debt for shipping. So my question, and as to be shared with Raffaele is a diplomatic approach when we discuss about this matter. How is on your side and on your view the mood of Italian banks in respect to the shipping positions? You feel that they have interest to sell the ships, or you think that they will continue to maintain the position inside their portfolios?
Well, I think, let me make a general statement and then I'll address it. The Italian banking system has been evolving from our perspective. Fortress has been involved in Italy since 2001 with a pretty significant presence, particularly in the NPL space. We manage 80 billion of NPLs in Italy across asset classes, very little shipping. And what we've seen with the banking industry and the banks in Italy is that they are progressively moving to clean up the balance sheets. And I think I think this is the right thing. I think there's a lot of pressure from the ECB and from the Bank of Italy to do this. There's a certain amount of consolidation of weaker players. There's been capital raises, significant capital raise by UniCredit. So I think the banks are working to. I think the banking system is cleaning up its balance sheet. I think shipping loans for banks are. Italy doesn't have the kind of exposure to shipping credit that some of the other banks had. And so the portfolio tends to be meaningful and depends on the bank and depends on the shipping. There are a couple of specific positions where this might not be true, but it doesn't overwhelm the banks in terms of a position. And what I would say the mood of the banks related to shipping is frustrated. That's the word I would use, because I think they would like to find solutions, but it's been difficult to do because of the nature of the loans. They're syndicated. The difficulty of enforcement for the banks has been a challenge. The banks want to find solutions. I think historically, because of it's been a long time from the perspective that both sides have, moved into positions against the other because maybe they felt like they had to or they had advice, and that's created tensions between the sides, meaning the ship owners and the lenders. But I think they're looking for solutions. And you saw this with the Pillarstone transaction, where the banks, I think, I wasn't part of that. I don't know much about it, but I think they were, that was a position they took to try to resolve it. I don't have a view. Our approach is a little different. What we try to do is, because we have, we're not. It's not our approach to be. We don't want to get involved in this industry so much that we're going to take on these kind of fights. We want to do this in a way we have good relationships with we are trying to be involved in the industry, and we're trying to be involved in the solution. We have good relationships with the banks. We're trying to develop good relationships with the ship owners, with the idea being that, given, in the end, if a solution is reached, everybody wins. The worst thing is for the problem to stagnate, and we see this time over time. And it's not just in shipping. I mean, it's in every asset class, real estate, everything that we do. The longer you wait to resolve the problem, the worse the problem gets. And so, it's just that the situation degrades to the point that there's no solution. And I think now is a very good time to find solutions. My sense is the banks are trying, they want to. I think with the pressure that they have, they're looking to. And it's just a matter of trying to reach that balance. And it's very difficult because it's not one party with one party. It's 4 banks, it's 5 banks. They may have different basis, different objectives, different, so this is trying to pull this together is not an easy thing to do. I don't know,
Is time spending this work in Italy in respect to the other countries?
I don't, we've been involved in other countries. We've done in other countries. We've had some of the same issues, and we've been successful. Those situations also took a lot of time. I think it's just a matter of investing the time at the right time. To me, I actually think probably now is a very good time. There hasn't been that much that's been done on a consensual basis in Italy, but I think I personally believe that the opportunity is there. And I think the banks are at a different point, in terms of what they want to do and what they have to do. I mean, I think they're at a point where the regulators are looking closely at these positions, and they just prefer to clean them up. I also believe that the banks, and this is just a matter of price and whatever, but we like to buy things outright. We don't really want the bank involved anymore. What we try to do is have a relationship with the ship owner, and then buy the debt together, and then resolve it where we have an alignment of interest, and we work with the ship owner to maximize the value of the result, and we align interests, so if we do well, they do well. Their equity is next to our equity, which is behind any debt that we have, that's what we're trying to do, and we've done it, and not just in shipping. We've done it in other countries in shipping. We've done it. That's what we do in real estate. That's what we do with most of our investments. Is align ourselves with very smart local operators. The staff we have for shipping is pretty, as you know, we don't have a whole shipping department.
But you share that the knowledge is quite paramount to approach the shipping, the specific knowledge in the industry.
Yeah, I think you have to have specific knowledge in the industry. I think it's important. I think it's more important to have good specific knowledge about your partner and aligning yourself with your partner. You pick the right partners and you align yourself with them, and then I think that's the most important thing. You have to have enough knowledge, because otherwise you'll make a mistake. But we have a lot of knowledge inside of Fortress, but we use a lot of advisors as well. Knowledge, we move in and out of different industries. We're not, we have many experts in many industries, so don't get me wrong, but we can move into an industry that we're not a specific expert in. By the way, shipping, we do have a lot of expertise. We've been involved in shipping, for many years. We started buying ships 12 to 18 months ago, so at the bottom of the cycle. So we own 30 or 40 vessels today. And we're continuing to build our fleet.
Thank you. I pass in to Raffaele. Raffaele, I want to show you this slide, and is strictly related to the talks of Charles. When I said before that the Italian banks seem to change the approach in the shipping industry, and now are quite keen to sell the positions. But I want to show by this that usually the shipping is considered riskier than other sectors. But these figures is drawn by global credit data, and probably we talked about a few days ago, where is showed that the loss given default done for the shipping industry is on the long term is close to 10%, as the inflection point is corresponding to the leverage of 60-80%, typical usual standard leverage for shipping industry. So just to consider that the loss given default for general corporate exposure is just 2 times of that. So why just keeping out the problem and issue related to EBA and NPL treatment, why the Italian banks still are not familiar with the shipping industry?
I accept your provocation. I think that Italian banks are familiar with the shipping.
Accept an example, President Antonio. Excuse me, Antonio.
I say that Italian banks are familiar with the shipping sector, and they understand the value of the collateral represented by the ship. And the numbers, the figures you show say more than 1,000 words about that. And this is the reason why we back the position that I represented before, that shipping mortgage, shipping loans should be treated at least like commercial real estate loans. Say that, I would like to say a few words about the new piece of regulation on defaulted exposure that was issued by the central bank. And I would say, answering your question that you made before, that banks work for ensuring the correct repayment of their credits. For this reason, wherever is possible, banks meet this goal, ensuring that the survival and the development of their borrowing companies. But we must consider that Italian banks or European banks have to comply with a lot of regulation at national, European, and international level, which relative to the disclosure and management of defaulted position for accounting and supervisory purposes. This means that banks do not have full discretion on the management of their defaulted position. And this means too that banks may have sometimes they may be obliged to sell the position that they cannot recover in a reasonable time frame. This is important. I think that this is important that also the shipping companies consider. And this is the reason why we are trying to cooperate with Confitarma in order to explain better to our customer what's going on and how the regulation regarding banks affect the relation between banks and their clients. So,
Thank you. Was quite interesting to hear your comment. Arturo, Antonio wants to reply.
If I may add some
Antonio, just 1 minute because we have to stay in the line. Please. Comment.
Okay.
Comment.
Okay.
Not understood. No, on the basis of the speech of the consideration of Raffaele, Fabrizio, you said before that the trend of shipping market is cyclical. Of course, all of us know this. And perhaps the approach of the bank to the shipping is the same. As I said before, to have shipping lending improved, perhaps we need to see a market recovery. So perhaps this is true. But I think that this cycle is different from the other one, and the difference between this cycle and the previous one is that now banks regulators focus their attention more than in the past on the shipping field. So this situation is different for banks because regulators, they never had so in the past. So of course this cycle is completely different because it's longer. I think that the structure of the market has changed, of the shipping industry has changed. So even if I said before, perhaps shipping banks appears again in the shipping market, in the shipping industry, when there will be a recovery of the market. In any case, it has to be clear that I think that the situation will be completely different from the past. Banks are becoming more selective. I think that large and efficient ship owners still have access to that bank, whilst the situation will be harder for smaller company having, for example, 2 or 3 vessels. Even if, to be honest, I think that considering shipping market situation now in progress, this kind of company gradually disappear. As I'm sure that consolidation among shipping company will continue. Second point, regulatory change. So all this will lead to a repricing of risk. So bank debt will become more expensive. So what does mean if leverage is to be used, it will be in a more effective way and will be, of course, more expensive. Third point, in any case, I think that will be in a prospective time less shipping, banking, lending in comparison with the level of the past. But all of this because we cannot avoid to consider that the regulatory framework has completely changed for banks in comparison with the recent past.
Antonio, hopeful that where you stated is true, since I still continue to see that generally speaking, the banks are quite sexy attracted when the market rise, when the market is sunny, and the opposite, they slow and they leave their attention when the market is cloudy. So Arturo,
the interesting consideration is that for some reason this crisis is different from the normal cycle of the shipping we are used to see. So some changes are going to happen in general. And I would like to focus on the next slide, because this slide is about the Chinese leasing and the possibility of a different source of financing. Risk.
Arturo, just a comment, because
Just a comment?
Graph, no, before.
Okay.
Come back. The graph upstate, so is the cake, is my calculation. And is the roughly, probably, is my estimation, the total dry bulk sales, including the new contracted, backed by Chinese leasing companies, is quite a huge
amount.
figure. Yes, is a quite. I am quite concerned for this.
I don't know, because under a certain point of view, there are risks and opportunities in the combination of traditional source and this form of Chinese leasing, that it's a way used by the Chinese government to subsidize their shipping building supply facilities.
This is the risk.
And this could be
This is a serious threat for the oversupply trend.
Yes, that's why I would ask to Mr. Chambon if the risk and the opportunities in the in this new fashion in the financing
basically,
way.
none of those leasing companies were active in the market 10 years ago. And now they are clearly the market makers, stepping into the liquidity gap that the closure of the bond market and the step back in the bank leverage has opened. Last year, they were supposed to, the plan was to invest up to $15 billion. They were publicly complaining on the fact they did not achieve the target, reaching up to $12 billion. So there is extra capacity, and they are looking for transactions by the end of the year. And we receive, as investment bankers, those messages from those banks saying, we need new transactions and we need to achieve the plan. For next year, they made publicly the statement that they need to invest up to $20 billion. So these are huge amount of liquidity flowing into the market. There were 0% of the financing amounts 10 years ago. Now, somewhere between 10, 15, 17%, depending on if you look at the funded amount or the committed amount, but still, they have the power to throw energy into the market. And there may be two sides, indeed, on that.
Do you think that is just restricted to the Chinese market, or?
Well, it all started on supporting indeed the Chinese ship owners, supporting the Chinese yards.
Shipyards.
And little by little, first because the domestic market was saturated and because it appeared that the yields they could generate out of China were higher than one they could do or achieve domestically. They had to invest abroad. Now it's assumed that 60% of, on average, of those portfolio are financing foreign ship owners. 40% should be on the domestic market. China is getting control of what is happening in the shipping market and in other markets, meaning that it's close last year to $200 billion that crossed the border from China.
China,
overseas.
shipyard, the cargoes and finance.
Exactly.
China.
And they are starting to regulate that, but those banks active in leasing managed to fund their money outside of China and to invest this money outside of China. And this is done on the back of the rating of those banks that is very strong. And the bigger they're getting, the higher is the rating, the cheaper is the cost of liquidity, and then you enter into a kind of snowball effect whereby basically they were not existent 10 years ago, and now they can offer pricings that are now almost as competitive as what you can get from banks plus tax lease component. So that's the point. So the danger into that is that basically those banks can provide up to 100% financing. Some may say even higher than that, looking at the statement China Development Bank made in the press on the FMG deal. They finance vessels, and they made a statement that this was like up to 120% on the fair market value, despite that's 100% of the shipbuilding contract price. So what does that mean? It means that they are able to finance above the shipbuilding contract, and that they can provide that as a cheap liquidity, cheap cost of liquidity. We had a bit of chit-chat discussion with one of the CFO of the big liner, and what they say is that basically it's like a drug sent into the market, and they can't help ordering. When you go to a yard, and the yard would say you, okay, basically we can offer you this vessel, prompt delivery, 100% financing. It's very hard to say, no, I don't take it. So ultimately, where does that go? That goes in probably a plan from China to sustain the yard, to have a bit of control over the maritime assets, I'm losing the point. But the danger is having those 5 leasing companies active in the market and driving the flow of liquidity creates a polarization effect. They are the ones throwing the liquidity. There are 5 or 10 of them, and they are sufficiently concentrated to open and close this liquidity into the market. So that's a big danger. And probably one of the key dangers as well is why would China have such a plan? Is it to take control of shipping assets? Is it to sustain the yard? Might be that actually China would benefit from much more vessels on the sea, lower freight rates, and virtually get closer to all importing countries. And they could export, import at cheapest cost. So that's the point. Having said that, don't too much time, it's not as dark as that. I mean, they declare themselves as being non-speculative. The money is there, ready to be invested. And they team up with the most professional, I would say, ship owners, and they are very picky on the name. So it's not just about throwing money and spending money. It's cautious investment, but in a magnitude that is indeed risky.
Thank you. So,
2 minutes for you, Charles. On the question put it by Arturo.
The question. One of the things, one of the important considerations we have done together with, especially listening to the words of Iaccarino and Rinaldi, is that the bank are not going to cover so much of the debt of shipping holding companies, of the financing needs of the shipping companies in the future. So my question to Mr. Spetka is that direct lenders and private debt funds can fill the gap uncovered by the banks.
The question was, can they? I mean, definitely they can.
Yeah, combined.
Yeah, well, on some combined basis. I mean, so, you know, I have a general view about lending, which is lending moves in cycles, and banks move.
We can call Alex, your colleague.
Yeah, Alex, call Alex. And so as cycles move, banks move, and they move from very aggressive, and they all move like a glacier towards some point until they stop and they move towards another point. So they overshoot, they give too much liquidity, and they give too little liquidity. And it's just a cycle. It's not anything about banks. It's the normal business cycle. And so our firm operates in two spaces primarily. One is we buy distressed, we invest in distressed opportunities, but the second is...
Charles, let me combine this second one.
Yeah.
One of the issues connected to, you know that I am a fan of direct lending, the banking disintermediation. But so after I want also to hear a comment of some ship owners. We have in the floor, in the first row, Mario Mattioli, the new elected the president of Confitarme. Is interesting your point of view. This is just the figure issued by my colleagues, which calculate the return expected by from the shipping quarterly by quarterly. As for tanker, the return expected is 8.75%. For the dry bulk, standing this current market is 7.26%.
On an asset.
Unlevered. So, on this figure, on the base of this figure, and if Mario can confirm, you consider the direct lending feasible for shipping or not?
Where? Yes, of course it's feasible. I mean, I think the question is really where are the banks? So, you know, if the banks will come in at a very low rate.
Yes, there is no match.
But at a senior level, then it leaves room for somebody like us to come in at a mezzanine level. I mean, these are not, you know, very high or very low yields from the way I think about asset yields. I mean, they're not, you know. I don't look at that and say, gosh, there's so much yield there, there's tons of space for somebody like us, but there might be enough depending on where the banks are and what the risk is in the asset and where we are in the cycle, because we look at, you know, we'll take into account where we are in the cycle to make an assessment of is there uptick. Well, because the yields, this is on a current yield income, current yield basis, and like, you know, shipping more than real estate has either reversion value or negative value, and you have to kind of think about that.
And that is the answer that I expected.
Yeah, and what we like to think about is, you know, not just, if we get involved in a mezzanine or quasi-equity position, we want to participate in the upside.
Okay. To catch up the microcycles.
Yeah.
Catch up the microcycles.
Exactly.
So then we go to finish, but we have the last comment, the last.
We can give
the last comment
Mario.
from Mario, where the market is recovering, but the model and the pattern is changing. So where the company of the past was based mostly on the asset. The company of the future, microphone, Mario? We bring you a traditional microphone. Launch the microphone.
Fabrizio, I think you are my hero because I think you are not only one of the most spectacularly learned person in this field, but you almost talk more than I talk. And this year we have a big challenge. We want to finish in time the conference and this session. And you recovered time because obviously there was some delay in starting. And so I think this is the last question, and we will achieve this great achievement for the first time, and I hope not the last in our life, and you'll be my hero tonight.
Sorry,
Obviously, Fabrizio wants to have Mario on his panel, and this is legitimate.
Just very quick.
Mario, just read a quote of Peter Evensen, which said in the Dynasty of the Seas, we learned the lesson of Lorenzo before, where stated that the shipping is a tradition, is a combination by tradition and innovation. So Peter said some years ago, but the fact is, it's the people who make the difference, not these large vessels. And ego can be blinding. Is another provocation.
Fabrizio, you are too much provocative, I must admit. And no, very simple. First question is, why don't you come to Confitarma and pay your fees with your 30 vessels, so we can enlarge our our membership. That will be great.
We need some Italian vessels.
But joking apart, I think that what is clear is that it's changing the pattern of the traditional shipping. I mean, in the sense that regarding, we were telling also this morning, regarding the financing and regarding the traditional approach with the banking system, something is going to change. This is not only shipping, but overall, I think, in all the industrial activity, and there is a lot of activity as well in Italy in order to promote the, let's say, growing in terms of managerialization of the smaller company in order to get a better access to the stock exchange and to alternative forms of financing. And this for sure is something that is coming as well into the shipping. Shipping, as we were seeing before, is an industry where there is a lot of competence within the companies, especially the traditional companies. They've got inside a lot of know-how on how to deal with ships. That is not really the easiest thing to do. So I think that a good combination of different alternative financing source, like can be the funds or other forms of investment, together with the banking system, could be only of big help within shipping, as well as we were saying, probably.
You were the president of Education Commission.
Yeah. I trust very much about that, and I trust very much about this. I think that we are going to change, and I think that we will see also integration, but not based on the fact that companies are not able to run, but because people should think that it is better to try to amalgamate and to put together before, in a moment in which you can create an advantage to the market. And so in this case, corporate governance is one of the big issues that we will have to see in the short terms. Big corporate governance, meaning that people and the traditional ship owner should try to better understand that it's better to be 1 + 1 makes 3, 1 - 1 doesn't make 0 but minus something. So it's better to get to the 3 beforehand rather than to the -3. So I think this is something that is on the table. We will be working a lot on that, Fabrizio. As well, you know that you are very active on this, and I think that in the future probably something will be changing. I saw the numbers about the IRR, and I must admit that on a certain extent there can be viable investments based on those numbers to compare to what we were traditionally used to see, that were a double-digit number that doesn't work at all. So from this point of view, I think that we can look to the future in a slightly more brighter way than it was a few years ago. And it's important to keep the open dialogue with all the institutions, including the ABI, of course, in Italy, and all the banking system, as well as try to understand which is the best way to let funds come in to be on the side of the ship owner, rather than we scared of the fact that a fund is knocking on the door. I mean, this is something that we will be looking in the future.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you so much. And
Thank you, Mario. Thank you very much.
after these wise
thanks
considerations
all of you,
Mario,
in
we can
particular
close.
to the chairs, and I think your contribution next year will be even larger. Also, the financial contribution of the financial institution that is totally absent to support this conference, but this is just a joke. I think it's better that the money rests with the bankers and doesn't subsidize and supports cultural activities. It's much better for the world. It's a joke. Is anybody wants to speak, or Pipino, you will speak during your interview? No, you want to speak now.
Posso? Sono Giuseppe D'Amato, sono il decano degli armatori campani e vice decano nazionale, perché prima di me c'è solamente Aldo Grimaldi. Sia Fabrizio sia il dottor Iaccarino sanno benissimo che noi da 3 anni stiamo lottando per avere una ristrutturazione, per un piano per risolvere i nostri problemi. A mio avviso, finché il piano sarà regolato sulle previsioni, sicuramente non lo risolveremo. Allora io dico, voi volete vendere delle navi? Benissimo. Sapete benissimo che realizzerete almeno il 50% del finanziamento, non di più. Ora, perché non lo riducete a noi? Noi col mercato attuale, perché il carico secco si sta riprendendo bene, col mercato attuale possiamo benissimo pagare se il vostro finanziamento si riduce. E io vi chiedo, perché dobbiamo vendere queste navi? Ma lei mi dice, voi mi dite, se poi quando il mercato scende, scendono le navi, ma perché se noi realizziamo il piano e vi paghiamo, va tutto bene. E non potete obbligarci a vendere. Se il mercato scende, ugualmente il mercato va male, e quindi è la stessissima cosa. E allora io vi chiedo, cerchiamo di ridurre il finanziamento. Col mercato attuale possiamo ripagare se il finanziamento è ridotto. Poi se le cose andassero male, vendiamo le navi, tenendo presente che se una percentuale dalla vendita viene a noi, la possiamo anche dare a voi, come pure se riusciamo a ottenere qualcosa in più dal mercato, possiamo metterci d'accordo per dividercelo. Io penso che questa non sia una domanda stupida, penso che possa perlomeno essere presa in considerazione. Grazie. Volevo dire ancora una cosa per quanto riguarda l'ABI. Tempo fa la Confidam fece un accordo con l'ABI, con il direttore, in base al quale se c'era o qualcuno voleva comprare il credito, l'armatore, il debitore, doveva essere informato ed eventualmente, se non è di suo gradimento, cambiarlo. E io ho una lettera del vice direttore che scrive alle banche che dice appunto questo, ma sappiamo benissimo che questo è stato completamente disatteso. Grazie.
Ringrazio Peppino D'Amato, che subito dopo il caffè che ci sarà gentilmente offerto, which will be offered to us by gli amici della ditta De Luca, come il pranzo di oggi è stato un gentile dono della Palumbo, del cantieri Palumbo. Vorrei ringraziare tutti e quindi darci un appuntamento l'anno prossimo. Non so se l'ABI vuol dire proprio in termini di epigrafe qualcosa amato un po' a nome del sistema bancario, delle conoscenze di...
Non so se rispondere in italiano o in inglese.
Italiano. Voi che siete stati così pazienti, voi siete stati quelli che ci hanno supportato.
Diciamo, noi con Confidarma, insomma, è chiaro, abbiamo un rapporto speciale che va avanti da diversi anni su diverse questioni e abbiamo anche affrontato il tema dei non performing loan, il tema della vendita degli asset. Ed è stato anche un tema che abbiamo proprio discusso nell'ultima riunione del tavolo istituzionale che noi abbiamo a Confidarma. Nell'ambito di questo tavolo era nata anche quella lettera che chiaramente noi nasceva un po' da una sollecitazione di Confidarma corretta, che noi abbiamo ritenuto corretta e abbiamo ritenuto corretto portare a conoscenza delle banche che c'è questa possibilità, cioè che nel caso in cui c'è la necessità di vendere un asset non performing, magari prima si può informare Confidarma perché possa eventualmente trovare sul mercato qualche soggetto che in un certo senso poi non disperda il valore commerciale dell'iniziativa. Evidentemente è chiaro che noi come associazione bancaria possiamo invitare le banche a tenere un determinato comportamento, non lo possiamo imporre e quindi evidentemente immagino che qualche banca avrà ritenuto di accogliere il nostro invito, altre non immagino per cattiva volontà, ma proprio per le ragioni che in un certo senso dicevo anche prima. Oggi le banche sono soggette a tutta una serie di normative europee in particolare che impongono di trattare le posizioni in default in un determinato modo, con determinati tempi e quindi quando si aprono i tavoli di restructuring e questi tavoli vanno avanti per parecchio tempo, ci può essere poi alla fine la necessità che se questi tavoli si protraggono per lungo tempo, che alla fine c'è una certa urgenza nella vendita della posizione. Quindi detto questo, noi come associazione bancaria non disconosciamo la circolare che abbiamo fatto alle banche. Non possiamo evidentemente imporre nulla alle banche che sono organizzazioni che si muovono nella loro autonomia. Bisogna tener conto però anche di quelle che sono le esigenze delle singole banche, delle regolamentazioni a cui sono sottoposte e quindi procedere, come dire, cercando di capirci vicendevolmente sulle rispettive esigenze.
Grazie allora a tutti, grazie a Arturo Capasso e a Fabrizio Vettosi che hanno moderato e in particolare Fabrizio ha invitato questi ospiti così interessanti, grazie a Mario, grazie a Peppino. Probabilmente il discorso I think the Italian banks and also non-Italian could be done in Rome. I think it would be very nice to talk when Mario and also the other Italian ship owners who are in particular dealing with under the lead of the president about these problems. I think it would be nice to have a confrontation, as Peppino invited us many years with the umbrella of this conference and Confitarma and ABI, if this is possible, and any other association that can contribute to find a market solution to market problems in a correct manner. I would like to, apart from thanking our refreshments and meal sponsors, and the financial community representative will excuse my jokes about bankers. I hear so many jokes about lawyers that I think our sense of humor should always be alive. We have 7 minutes coffee. I hear, and there is another highlights of this state, one of the last highlights, because we are starting with Peppino D'Amato, will very briefly tell us with Bianca. I will be on the podium outside, because Bianca said, no, I don't want to be alone. Bianca Antonio, the famous shipping journalist of Secolo XIX and many other newspapers, Visatore Marittimo and so many others. And she's an old friend of all of us, in particular of Peppino. And Peppino will tell us about his, I think, almost 80 years old navigation within shipping, which still continues. And this will be in Italian. So if our foreign guests take their headphones, this would be very useful to listen to this very interesting and important time. And then I think we will cut our conversation also because I didn't prepare anything. And Mark Van Peel, the president of the Port of Antwerp, was already on this stage. So I think we will leave a couple of extra minutes to Pietro Spirito, the president of the Port Authority of the Central Mediterranean Sea that encompasses Naples and Salerno. And then we will have a very interesting 10 minutes time with a historian about this ancient maritime, merchant marine tradition in the Sorrento Peninsula. Perhaps we heard things about Genoa, so we hear about this very brave sailors and captains and ship owners, and some of our families, including Mario and myself, have them in our blood. And I speak for myself, not for Mario. I think if I had 1/10 of their braveness, I would be a very courageous and strong and Iron Man. But unfortunately, with less than that, I'm trying to do what I can. Then we will have, I think, one of the most interesting end of our conference with three relatively young, in particular a young lady, and then the president, the new and the old president of the young ship owners group. In this, also this Giacomo Gavarone hands over from Andrea Garolla, as Manuel does. So I think we will have just a quick coffee, and then this last session. I hope that you will all with us in time in 5 or 6 minutes, without forcing me to do the work of a dog, a shepherd dog. Thanks a lot.